All right, welcome everybody to our philosophy group. And we are starting in Stevenson's today. We're starting on page a little bit on 16. We're going to 17, which is in the freshman text of Stevenson's book written in 1927. And we're doing the normal and complete cycle. And it's very interesting, the normal and complete cycle. I've read it many times, and I'm really excited to read it again. It starts off with universal intelligence, which is a great place to start. I'm going to start reading now, unless anybody has anything they want to begin with. All right, I'm going to start jamming this. All right. The first step of the normal complete cycle, universal intelligence. The infinite intelligence that is the source of everything in the universe. The infinite intelligence pervading all space and matter, which creates and governs all things, both material and immaterial. It occupies all space and distance. It has existed always. It is older, wiser, greater, stronger, and better than anything in the universe. It created everything and must have been first and indefinitely superior in order to do it. It must have been and is very intelligent. Having these virtues, it must have never made a mistake and therefore is always right. Being always right is always good. Being infinitely good is God. See Webster's definition of God. Being infinite, no one can define it. Actually, one can get only a finite idea of it from the finite amount of manifestation to be able to perceive. This intelligence is not limited. It is we who are limited in perception. And has some diagrams. It endows living things with localized power, in parentheses, innate intelligence, as a higher manifestation of its forces. All right, does anybody have any input? Would you like to add anything? Any questions? All right, what does that have to do with chiropractic? Why would we spend any time at all thinking about innate intelligence or universal intelligence?
Because it is what has created us. So as chiropractors, we only, well, as we have been talking about, we only do like maybe physical things, but that's our limit. And then we have to understand and also keep learning about how this intelligence works and confiar and trust and rely that all this intelligence will do its own work.
And how we can work with it together.
That's important stuff. Exactly. That's the practical aspect. And we like to bring everything into practice. Brian mentioned it to me earlier today. And we've always brought things and how we bring it to the people. And that's very important. And Sisyphus used to say, I move the bone, God does the healing. And the more we read of chiropractic philosophy is that we're not even really moving the bone, innate is, but we'll get to those things. So that's really good. Thank you both, Veronica and Edgar. Anybody else or have any questions for them or any comments or any input? Everybody awake? It's a little late. You're tired of watching the election stuff? Well, I'll give you my 2 cents. There was somebody who was just posting, do you need to believe in God to be a chiropractor? And I think it was on the Mile High page. And I don't know if belief is important. BJ said, I don't believe in God. I know God exists. And there's a big difference in the belief and the knowing. But when we understand how, and what we just read from Dee Dee, and you guys, I know you might be in your first time on this with us, about how the service of chiropractic being our duty. And, there's a lot, people get upset about the religion, Dee Dee talking about religion, but he said over and over again, I'm not trying to make this a religion. And we really came to a consensus that, the religion of chiropractic is serving and understanding we're really working for that higher power in each adjustment we give. And I think that is very important. That's why we have to know about, at least have a basic understanding of universal intelligence. And he says right here, look at the definition of God. And it doesn't matter what your religion is. I don't even care about that. It's understanding that there is more to this adjustment than moving the bone, the physical nature of things. Anybody else? Hi, Marina.
Hi. We don't have to believe like about a religious thing, because it's the same thing as we think about the sun is gonna rise, the apple is gonna fall off a tree, or the birds are gonna fly to the same direction towards the best climate. So there is an intelligence, and it is also inside of us. So it's more than just a religious thing for me.
That was excellent and very well put. Anybody have any comments or questions or anything we'd like to ask Marina anything? That's, it's really powerful, because the next part we're going to read is about innate intelligence. And Brian, I just saw you guys unmuted up there. Do you guys have anything to add?
I was just going to say, well, D.D. Palmer, Haig, I sent you that little picture, that quote about for universal intelligence, then he had in parentheses God, but he didn't think the world was ready to hear a chiropractor say that at that time. All I know is I've been doing this for quite a few years and taking care of people. I've seen people who were told they would never get better, or this and that, and all these problems that they had, and they got better, which defied all laws of physics and so-called science and all these things. And those people are better because I didn't allow myself to get, I think it's because me being that serving people with that, you want to say universal, connected to that or God, people sense that. And if they want to catch on to that, they'll pick it up from me, and they can, however they choose to use it, they'll use it. But I think my presence in knowing that helps them feel safe to do it for themselves without me saying a word to them, just by purely serving them with my intentions. That's what I have to say.
So what you're saying, if may I ask you, are you talking about you're raising your tone or your vibration with having the consciousness of God or universal intelligence?
Yeah, it's like I'm stepping out of space and time to allow myself to do that. And when that person steps out of space and time, we don't have to worry about the laws of physics or science, because it's beyond all of that. And they take that and they step back into space and time, and all of a sudden they feel better when no one else, even including themselves, would think they could feel better. So it's just like, it's like a whole other dimension. It's like where I always talk about chiropractic about having heaven here. And we allow people to step into heaven and bring it here and use it and live with it and where we are right now.
There's a lot of depth to everything you just said. There really is. I'm going to go back and listen to that later on too. And when we are truly connected and a letting go of the outside world, it's just God and God, innate and innate, spirit and spirit. There is no time or space or limitations of matter. Anyone else or have any input?
To me, it's the start. Like, you have to have a starting place when you're going to get into the rest of the text, the rest of the information. You have to have your source. You have to have your starting place. And so we have to start with universal intelligence, which describes as infinite intelligence. It's the uncaused first cause. It's always been there. It always exists. And then from that, is where we get innate intelligence, which is what resides in the living things. It endows the living things with localized power as a higher manifestation of its forces. So to me, it's setting the stage. It's the background of knowing that this is the star. This is the time of this all-encompassing, we can't even possibly perceive it with our little 8-pound brain. Only slight manifestations of it, but that's the power, I think, that we're dealing with on a very, very small scale. So in a practical application for me, it's like, this is the start. Before you get into the rest of it, understand that this is the start of its essence, of where innate comes from. But then also to understand, I think, on a higher level, this is the power that you're dealing with. So don't get caught up, like when someone comes in with a diagnosis or what you think someone is capable of or not. This is the power that we're dealing with. And so it just constantly is a constant reminder of not to get bogged down in there's all the stuff that we're inundated with on a daily basis sometimes. So, yeah.
That's good insight. Really, is keeping the outside world out, staying focused on God or universal, and knowing all that power is within them. Yeah. Anyone else? Anybody have like to ask John anything? Sarah, you have something to say?
I was very clear on what chiropractic was before I went to school, because I had an excellent chiropractor. And then when I went to school, I got really confused because, they were just going so deep into the science. But then, I had an image really just finally shown to me of what being clear and connected meant, and I literally saw like a pipeline coming up, and that connects us with universal intelligence. And when that is free flowing, we're clear and we're connected to love and God and harmony and all of that, health, whatever you want to call it. And then all these things happen to us and they start to disconnect, and the person starts to get disconnected from that intelligence. And when someone gets adjusted, we start becoming connected and clear. And you can tell, I don't know, you can tell people that are clear. You start looking at chiropractors that have been getting adjusted a long time. They're clear. They have something, You can tell, I can tell, at least with a baby that hasn't been vaccinated, their eyes look at you and they're really present. Oh, that baby's clear, And sometimes, with those babies that have been vaccinated, they're not as there, So I don't know. It's like the longer I do this, it's kind of like the more simple it gets. And it's more about universal intelligence than anything else. So.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. I love that. Anyone else?
I'm sorry. I will say another interesting thing that I noticed. Now, this is as a Christian myself, okay, and I'm not trying to impose this. I'm just saying something that when I was in church, something that my church talks about, which for me, I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is what we talk about as chiropractors. So anyway, he talked about that talked about the vertical and the horizontal, that before your relationships on a horizontal level can be good, relationships with other people, is that the relationship this way has to be set first. So if your relationships going, again, out with other people are not there, you have to look to the connection to your relationship to the source first. So for me, I'm like, this is above, down, inside out. This is, it was just a really interesting parallel. So
I never
That's really
thought
cool.
about it in that way. That is excellent. Veronica, did you have you say something? I just saw you unmute.
Oh no, just I said that, well, what he said, it's really cool. I haven't thought about it either.
Anyone else?
Yeah, so what's interesting is that in the context of this historically, we're recognizing the power source, the starting point, like John said, of everything that happens with the innate intelligence and the universal to innate. And if you notice in that couple of paragraphs there in Article 49, God's only mentioned once in that one sentence. And historically, when Dee Dee was around, and also BJ and all of us trying to promote our profession, Christian Scientists were real big, other things were real big, and we wanted to make ourselves separate and distinct. And so to take the religion lingo out of it and define it and describe it this way as universal intelligence still appeases to what the chiropractors wanted, yet what we all believe, there is an intelligence. It is universally guided as well.
You know, I think that's very important too, because in history, what was happening in the Midwest, you had the Seventh-day Adventists, the Mormons, Christian Science, all those things really coming up at that time and really gaining ground, which is amazing. And, you know, DD was very, very distinct, being separate and distinct. And I think you're right on target with that. That's good. Anyone else, or have anything to ask anybody, or any more input? Now, I can move on to innate intelligence. I'm going to move on to that one, to Article 50. Okay.
Just one question before
Go ahead.
to Sarah. What she was saying about how when she went to school, she saw like this different view that they had. Do you have any like I don't know, any recommendations on how to be like to get the, well, you said like you then went back to, and saw that like that connection like really clear. Do you have any advice that you can give, like to be more aware and go back to that like perspective?
Simplicity. I think the best thing is to get adjusted a lot. I don't know if there's good chiropractors around you guys, but the more you get adjusted, it's a natural evolution. It's very like it was even challenging for me in school to meditate, you know, because my mind I was so mental and I was so overwhelmed on the mental. So but I could get adjusted. And then when I got out of school, I was able to bring back other practices that really helped me connect even further. So it's like kind of do the best you can and get adjusted as much as you can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? That's all really good input. Excuse me, I'm just trying to send, people are asking me questions and I'm trying to get them hooked up with us. So I was on another page. Anybody have any other input? That's all really important.
I don't know about school. You just have to jump through the hoops and be done with it. You know, it's a shame that's the way it is, but it's probably not all that much different. I graduated in, 96. And it's still pretty much the same nonsense that was going on when I was there. And that will change, but at the moment, just do your best.
And, you know, as being a student, you know, just getting through it, but, you know, also doing things like this, and then also sharing it with other students too, or connecting and talking about this philosophy and growing with it. And, getting that excitement really gives you the energy when you graduate, and that gives you the step forward from most of the other people trying to start. And, I think you are a step ahead, really, of just the 1%, of the students out there. And a lot of people really, they talk a big game, they want to get involved, but really getting involved and just in doing like you are. You guys have already translated, Dee Dee Palmer's book with me, and you're miles ahead than most chiropractors on this planet, which is exciting. And, getting the inspiration like Sura did, it's just like, to me, it's just like Dee Dee getting the inspiration, or wherever we get these things in our life, we'll see it when the time is exactly right God gives it to us in the exact right time, not a moment before, not a moment after. And I think you're inspiring a lot of people yourself right now, both of you. Anybody else? Anybody have any input or comments or questions?
Well, I was at a seminar. I was on stage with 6 other men, chiropractors. And Armin Rossi was asked that question. And his response was the most memorable of our meeting. And what he told the student in order to, how do you stay in touch with Innate? He said, I didn't say it, but he said it and everybody liked it. He said, stay away from assholes.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing for everybody.
So just like what Haig said, hang out with like-minded people.
I'm going to go in a slightly different direction, I think, and refer to something that John said in the process, and that is you want to reach out for, sorry, there's a helicopter going by outside. It's really loud. I'm sorry. You have to reach out and find your personal spirituality. And John apologized for saying something about, I don't want this to be Christian, and it's not. And it's the spirituality that we find through chiropractic with Universal, or that people speak of as Muslims or Jews or Christians. It's all the same spirituality. You have to reach out and find your connection to that. And interestingly, I wrote something recently the other day, a realization that I had. I'll just read you what I wrote, and hopefully it'll be valuable in this context, is that religions are robes spirituality wears. Try on different robes and find what fits. Absorb all the concepts and you'll find your own path. And we get lost in some ways, religion, calling this a religion or that a religion becomes a divisive force, whereas the universality and the universal intelligence, as we call it in chiropractic, is really the center of all of them. And so you need to find out your connection to that and use that to connect with your practice members, because the spirit in us is part of that universal spirit. And by contacting it with one another, that's how we find the true subluxations and help them reach a higher level. Does that help? Or is that too far out on the edge?
Oh, it's perfect. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Alan.
That was very insightful. I like that, Alan.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'll just say, for the guys in school, make sure you enjoy yourself when you're in school, because I didn't. So just make sure you take the time to enjoy yourself, because it's not worth getting upset. It's not. Just enjoy it. Find nice people and enjoy them, because it's really important. It will make your life much better. And I'm telling you from experience.
I wish I knew it on my first semester. But thank you. I'll try it for the rest of the school years.
I think I'm gonna take that for myself. That's the greatest wisdom we've shared today. Enjoy it.
I also think whether you're in school or you're in practice or retiring, if you're feeling upset or disturbed in any way, when your heart is not at peace, our chiropractic philosophy says symptoms like that, we want to sit down with it. Don't try to change it. Don't try to be positive. Don't override it. This is part of what's in my life right now. I'm feeling uncomfortable. So I'm going to sit with it and let it breathe itself out. And I'm gonna love it to death until it's done doing its thing. I'm gonna investigate it. I'm not gonna run from it. I'm gonna lean into it. And when we're in practice and our patients are telling us, I can't stand this pain, their resistance to the pain is making it worse in the same way. So this philosophy that we have of not treating symptoms, it's more than that. It's actually, we lean into the symptom of my own disturbance. And the only way to get rid of it and to go into the enjoyment is to acceptance of wherever I'm at. And I can't run from my disturbance. I gotta like have the courage and the fortitude to just bring it on. And it goes. That's the best way for me. And I recommend that.
You know, Plato said, know yourself. You got to know yourself, and you label those things, and you get past them, you step through them. Yep. Anyone else?
Self-acceptance, even the ugly parts.
You chose it. Choose to make it different.
Alchemists, we're alchemists. When you allow it in, we can turn it to gold.
So getting back to the one question, what is the reason for universal intelligence in chiropractic and knowing it? And then we're going to move on to innate intelligence. We all just sort of answered it, because having God, understanding the spiritual nature, the next part being innate. And Sigafust asked me once, why is it important we teach our people about innate? And I think really teaching about spirit, because we give them hope, I think is for me, the number one reason. And not just really about chiropractic, but about their own personal God within, which is innate intelligence, to give people hope that there's something more than the body they're lived in and what people have told them their whole life, that they're not enough. That's why I do it. And that's where I've seen the biggest change in the people, just that they're powerful. All right, anybody else before I move on? All right, good stuff. 8:33, good timing. I like 33s. The second step of the normal complete cycle, innate intelligence, the localized or inborn intelligence of a living thing, a finite portion of universal intelligence in a finite portion of matter, whose mission is to keep the matter in active organization. Individualized universal intelligence, a segment of universal intelligence, which, though a part of it, is distinct from it. While innate intelligence is a finite portion of universal intelligence, it represents the amount of attention that universal intelligence is giving to that amount of matter. All matter is based with a caretaking of supreme intelligence. And if this ceases for one moment, matter would cease to exist. We do not know, of course, but it seems reasonable to believe that the Creator's solicitude did not end when things were created, that universalism is continuously unfolding thoughts of which everything in the universe gets its share. That amount intended for it, no more, no less. Organic things seem to be blessed with greater amounts of attention than inorganic things. So much so that universal intelligence has endowed the living organism with localized or specialized branches of itself to attend to things that much have immediate or localized decisions. in order to keep the matter organized. The next one, he defines organized. But anybody have any comments or anything on what we just read? This section goes on a little bit longer of innate, but let's think about why, is it important to understand about innate intelligence? Other, doctors are talking about innate intelligence now. There is some guy I just saw a TEDx thing talking about our innate intelligence and how the body heals. And he's a microbiologist or something like that. Why are chiropractors so afraid to talk about these things or anything? Anybody have any input or comments? I personally feel that they're afraid of talking in a religious way. And I think we've been so beaten down and downtrodden of not being open to talk about God and spirituality that has become taboo to do it. I don't hold back when I do talks or I go speak somewhere. I talk about what I feel is right. And if someone gets upset, that's their thing. And many more people may be inspired by it. If we don't bring that intelligence and that understanding of innate and spirit, God and universal, I think we're doing the people a disservice. That's my thought. Anybody else?
Well, Haig, can I ask you something?
Yeah.
What would be the relationship? What about innate and about the soul? Are they different things? Are they the same?
Well, we talked about that. We mentioned it and said we'd get back to that a couple of weeks ago. And I feel the soul is different than innate. And Pasquale mentioned that as well back in the day. And we talked about that. And he talked about that's where we receive a lot of the garbage from the outside. He said it was dirty and we need to cleanse it at times. I'm still working on that. I don't have a clear picture for myself. And this is a good place for us to really maybe even gain a clear picture. Thanks for bringing that up. What would other people think about that? Or you, Brian?
Well, for me, I look at it, innate is just it has to be like even BJ said, let the God above flow through the innate below. And it's like innate has to be lined up with universal. And I think a lot of us have gotten off course inside of ourselves. And that's why we have wars and crime and all these crazy things coming on. And the Bible says, make the road straight for the Savior to come. And the only Savior for yourself is yourself. So we help people make the road straight to save themselves. In other words, get their innate lined up with the universal intelligence. Because I think a lot of people, those two have to be synced up, have to be working together. And I believe that's what chiropractic does. It helps the people go tick, tick, tick till they finally are merged. And then you won't see any of this crazy. You're going to see a lot of these crazy people who think all these politicians and lying. Their time is up. It's up. Because they can't live in this new frequency anymore. Because too many people are waking up and they're realizing if I follow them, that's me following something that's off course. So we're all making the road straight for ourselves. And one last thing, I've been taking care of a guy with a stroke. And he's doing so much better for like 7 months. And the other day he said to me, he goes, I finally forgive myself. And Haig, you remember Pasquale would always say, the only person you can forgive is yourself.
Yeah.
When you forgive yourself, you give yourself permission to move forward. In other words, make the road straight for the Savior to come. And that's a beautiful thing. And that's why chiropractic came here. So that's it.
Anybody have anything to ask Brian maybe, or any comments?
I have a question that I get asked a lot that I'm curious what you guys think. Sometimes people say, how do you know if that's the voice of innate or if that's the voice of your fear or the part that sabotages you? Or like, how do you know when it's really your innate?
Would anybody like to comment? I'd say for me, Go ahead.
I was going to say, there's an old saying, the first thing that comes to you, that's God whispering in your ear. The second thing is your doubt and fear.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's the first thing that comes to me. The rest is me trying to talk myself out of it.
Yeah.
You know, the more we practice at it, the less we have that second one. We just hear the one voice. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I think of innate as soul, and that it's perfect. And I've had discussions with my rabbi about it, and he says, well, souls can be damaged. And I say souls can't be damaged. They're perfect. And that's innate. It's always perfect. It's part of universal. And to relate to the question just asked, I think of it, well, and the evil things that happen, the bad things is ego. It's educated brain versus innate brain. You know, and we learn stuff and we get trained stuff, mother, father, teacher, preacher, people we know, people we hang out with, we become to listen to them, and we learn stuff, and ego says, I got to be here, I have to be this, I have to do that, and innate says, maybe not. And so to listen to one versus the other when it comes to a decision, I try to listen and say, does this bring me peace or does this bring me turmoil? And I sit there, is this a choice between this and that? And I say, okay, I'm going to go this way. And if I go, I feel disrupted, it doesn't feel right, that's ego, if you will. Or if I feel peace, that's the decision, you know. And yes, I think that we have to be relatively clear and adjusted to be able to be in tune with that. But I think that if we can listen and truly listen to hear for that peace or turmoil within ourselves as we make a decision, those decisions are right. And the more you make them and the more you listen to them, the stronger the connection gets.
Would anybody like to ask Alan anything or have any comments or want to comment themselves?
Yeah, I agree with you, Alan. I think the way you know whether it's your ego or your innate is that in your heart, you'll feel peace.
Can I ask Alan something?
He might be speaking.
Yeah.
Well, Alan, what do you mean by ego? If you could explain that, please.
I mostly think of ego more like what educated brain has us do. An educated brain sometimes knows what to do, but it isn't always, but it's things that we've learned as opposed to instinctual things. And it isn't, what we learn is not always wrong, but we have to learn to distinguish and be able to accept things that we've been learned as not necessarily, they change. You know, levels of cholesterol that are acceptable go up and down. You know, as they're now, it's average, not normal, if you will. So ego, and I think that when we read other things in Stephenson and other books here, it talks about educated brain as trying to dominate, and that innate has to be the master. And I think about it mostly in terms of an educated brain issues as ego.
I'm going to make a comment really and go back and then come back to the ego, is that the innate is the animator. That is the portion of God that gives life. And then the difference of the soul, even Dee mentioned that in 1914 in that first chapter, the soul really being this life force that we are not just the animator, but that's where I think the ego is, or really most of the time when people talk about ego, they're talking about self-esteem, something that would add esteem to themselves, because ego means I am is what the definition is. So we all should know who I am. Plato said, know thyself, right? And, you know, the soul being, if there is a reincarnation, that is what follows through karma is the soul. Innate is still God. It's just that part of God that's animating life. Thank you, God, for life. The soul being what we carry through, the garbage that we've carried from from day to day and the stuff that collects the debris of the outside world. That's the way I see it, and sort of what I've gotten from Pasquale, our teacher, and some of the stuff that I've meditated on about that. And ego for me really is, the stuff that I wish was the reality. That's where I say, really, most of the time when I mention ego, I really should be saying self-esteem, of what would bring more esteem if I'm trying to boost myself up or some way, and someone would say that's ego. Well, I am showing what I am, I am working towards a better self of what the I am is. Ego is, I think we have to have some clarity even that for ourselves. What am I towards God is what I think the whole definition really should be. What are your thoughts on that, Brian?
Well, for me, the word ego to me has been, like you said, it means I am. And you want to throw a little more, so ego sum, S-U-M, means I am all. And to me, that people use the word ego meaning, it's like you said, someone's selfish. All they do is care about their worldly needs. They'll screw people over because it's just all about their own glorification and not about helping others. I look at ego as it's really our God's consciousness. And to me, it means EGO, emanating God's own. That's how I look at it. The selfish stuff and being mean and nasty, to me, that's the alter ego. And that's what people focus on. I know it's a play on words, but we're saying the same thing. I'm just saying a little bit differently. I think the alter ego is what has taken over. And that's what, it's like Elvis became a drug addict and got crazy. And someone asked Pasquale, how did that happen to Elvis? And he said, sometimes we create an aspect of ourselves, and that aspect takes on a life of its own. And for me, that's what that alter ego does for people. I want to switch back to the true ego, meaning true north, meaning being aligned with God. And that's what it means to me. We're pretty much saying the same thing. I'm just using that word differently. Like I said, it means emanating God's own. And that's how I use it. And it just seems to be a little bit easier for me to think that way. That's how I do it. I don't demand others think that way. So that's it.
Anybody have anything to ask Brian or anybody else, or any comments?
Yeah, I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Forget the word ego right here. Do you think when Jesus said, I and my Father are one, do you think if he was a chiropractor, he would be saying, my educated and my innate are one?
What does everybody think?
No, I think that would have been my universal and my innate are one.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
What about the educated? Where is that in the formula?
Maybe that's the soul.
Educated is what is what this corporeal body has developed, and as human beings we've learned over time that the development is that's educated. Innate is imbued with all knowledge, and therefore is within us and is adapting us to the universal forces that act upon us at all times that don't care, if you will. The universal forces are gravity sucks, it just does. We're adapted to the forces that enter us and can either adapt them to be constructive or accept them as destructive survival values as they come through, right? To get further down the line in some of the stuff that's in the books. But it's, and that's what innate does, is allow that adaptation to occur. That's its job within us, and to maintain us in existence. I think that I think that part of our discussion, I can understand the discussion, the positions on ego as it, but I think that some of that, I see it more as from the self-aggrandizement side and the negative side, and that if innate runs through, then we're achieving the and through service, we reach higher levels and the success comes with that. And we don't seek, ego is seeking those things rather than achieving them through service, if you will, and to oversimplify.
And someone else was going to say something. It just says iPad. I don't know your name. I apologize.
Barry.
Barry. Okay.
Yeah. So
welcome, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. I completely look at an ego as educated, not soul. Ego, I could say I am white. I could say I am Native American. I am happy. I am sad. I am anxious. These are all educated thoughts, and we could carry that with us. And we've defined good and bad. It's still thoughts. It's educated brain. Innate intelligence does not think about that. Innate intelligence just organizes and does. It's us humans putting into context and putting into words, and that's where we're asking, define ego. Where's ego? I really don't see ego that much in the green books. Yeah, ego is in there. Soul is definitely in there, especially with DD, but also BJ. Soul definitely more universal. Ego is educated intelligence, us right now saying what we are not as well.
I like it. Anybody else? And you have any questions or want to ask them anything?
I looked up the word educated, and it's from Latin. You spell it educare. It means to draw out. And most people, when they talk about educated, I think what, to me, Alan, you're saying is we're stuffing all this junk in, stuffing more and more junk inside of ourselves. And how can you really experience the presence of God if you got all this junk some teacher pumped in my head, and I accept that as being the real thing? And chiropractic helps, to me, us draw out the toxins, draw out the garbage, so I can really, like I said, make the road straight for the Savior to come. So I really know what's going on. And I think we're all saying the same thing. We just maybe say it a little bit differently, but that's the beauty of being a chiropractor.
Yeah.
That's how we help people. We all improvise and do things in our own special way.
So Brian, when you've said a couple of times tonight about getting straight, I actually think of two things: the spinal column, the atlas, the medulla oblongata getting straight, right, with what we do, but also Sarasoli, who talks about eventually we want our heart to be straight, it's in alignment. That's when we're pure, that's when we transcend. So I'm actually thinking about both of those things when you say that.
Yeah, he spoke about our chakras. One is spinning in one direction, one is spinning the other direction, but they're not spinning. We have to get them spinning the same direction at the same speed. So we have to slow down to do that. So yeah, thank you for saying that.
And getting the heart into center, because right now we're in left field. And when we see those pictures of Jesus and Mary with the heart in the center, right? Brian, you gave me a laminated one of those.
Yeah.
When we find our center, or we're on our true north, even, you know, that's you know, powerful stuff from Pasquale. Well, we're gonna wrap some things up now. Okay, it's almost 9 o'clock, and we had a really good discussion. That's what this is all about: is discussing chiropractic philosophy, our personal philosophy, and really how it serves our people. I've outlined, I did it today, I've outlined Stephenson's, the senior text, some of the freshman texts. We could skip around because, you know, there's a lot of good content, but we don't really need to read every single page and every word. I'm also I have my outlines for 1910, for DD's 1910. So we have a lot of content. Doing a little bit more of the normal and complete cycle, I think, is important. There's a lot of good stuff here. And then in the senior text here, we go through the 33 principles with Stephenson, and he goes into depth with them. And some of them a little verbose. We can narrow some of that down, but you know, over the next few weeks. And I'm open to suggestions at any time. If someone has some things they want to go through, we're absolutely open to do it. Right now, it's, you know, I really just want to bring things so we can have good discussion like we did today. No one's right or wrong. Everyone is expressing themselves, and I think a lot of us are thinking in the same ways. We have students from around the world here, Brazil, Mexico, Spain, and you know, and all over the country. So, and then, you know, hundreds of years of chiropractic with the people here as well. You know, if we combine how long we've all been in practice, and we have our newest PhD, Carol Crystal, here, which I'm really proud of her still. I'm so excited about that. And, you know, so I'm grateful for it. Like, you know, I feel I get a lot out of this, and I understand myself even more. Does anybody have any closing statements they'd like to say or anything?
I'd like to ask Alan, what is your last name and where do you live?
My last name is Lichter, and I am right outside of Washington, D.C. I'm in Silver Spring, Maryland. I practiced 5 blocks from the White House. I retired a couple years ago.
Oh,
That's
wow.
why you have helicopters flying around you right now.
But yeah, my practice was at 16th and K Street. So when you see the stuff for Black Lives Matter, that's where my office was, right there. But I did want to say something, just in reference to the question about educated. I turned the page, and on page 813 of Stephenson, the definition there says educated brain is that part of the brain used by innate as an organ for reason, memory, education, and the so-called voluntary functions, the seat of educated mind. It is liable to incoordination as any other tissue. It is not a vital spot. The existence is actual, but its location is theoretical. So that's just for data's sake. That's what Stephenson had to say about educated brain in brief. That goes on from there.
I see we have Bob Crystal here too. He just popped in. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, referring to what you spoke about 10 or 15 minutes ago, Haig, when you were saying how a lot of the young chiropractors are afraid to sound religious and all that kind of stuff.
And old.
What I can say is, and I hope I'm speaking to some of those people, you give it a try this way for your own sake and for your people's sake. Just say, you leave out all the fancy terms. Just say things that are obvious. You know that I can't heal a plant, but I could give it water. You know that I can't heal you, but I can do something to help you be a better healer of yourself. These are things that people, when they hear that, they shake their heads, and you know they get it right away. It's so simple and it's so obvious. You don't have to get, if you're not comfortable with saying innate or God or whatever, then, you know, leave that out for now. But give them our philosophy just the same.
Good stuff. Thanks a lot, Bob.
You can remind them that what makes that cut heal? Is it the Band-Aid? No, their body is healing that cut no matter what happens. But it can heal faster or slower if you keep it clean, if you remove the interference to its ability to heal. You put the Band-Aid on to keep it from being re-injured. You're removing the interference for the healing process.
Absolutely.
Amazing night. Every week we're doing this, okay? The Zoom code's 33 1895 1895. Not hard to forget or remember.
Right on your thing, on your phone.
You guys really add a lot to my life, and I appreciate you. And I'll see you next week. Fernando, good to see you finally made it.
Thank you.
Okay.
I had to apologize because I was working and I couldn't join before.
No apology necessary,
No
my friend.
apologies necessary. And I'm going to post this on the YouTube channel, and I usually post it around a little bit once I get the recording going. And, you know, Innate Express is the YouTube channel. And, you know, you can watch these anytime. You can go back for half a year and, you know, look at them if you want. But, you know, I love and appreciate you all. Have a fantastic night, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.